out and get those. Steve Berland is no stranger to this group. He serves as Executive Vice President of GenElite, which specializes in marketing high-end genomic embryos to international AI companies. No strangers to Holstein circles, Steve has spent his entire career working with registered Holsteins. In addition to assisting with the Wisconsin Convention Future Sale last night, and for a number of years for that matter, Steve has started at our industry as a herdsman at Deerbrook Farm. From 1982 to 2000, Steve held numerous roles within Holstein Association USA, including field representative, classifier, technical supervisor of classification, director of type evaluations, and then eventually heading up international sales, promotion and education. In 2000, Steve co-founded GenElite with Jim and Claudia Cooper, and that partnership remains in existence to this very day, with the mission of, quote, create, cultivate, and fulfill opportunities to market, procure, and develop superior Holstein genetics for customers worldwide. Primary focus is on elite genetics, genetic services, and quality customer service. Steve, an opening question for you. Tell us a little bit more about your business. Specifically, what are your customer expectations, and how do you partner with them to secure top-end genetics and genomics in the United States?
Okay, thanks, Corey, and good morning, everybody. Everybody looks like they're smiling and stayed at the bar too late last night. We're really keeping an eye on this table in the front here. But no, it's a pleasure to be here. I only hope Hendrik and I can do as good as the young greeters yesterday. I thought they did just an excellent job, so if we can do half as good as those, we'll call it a success. But no, I always enjoy getting over here. Some of you are more familiar with our business than others. GenElite, really our focus is working with AI companies in other countries to procure genetics that they can bring back to their country to incorporate into their AI programs, marketing semen, and also developing cow families from here as well. We have our main clients would be International Kaido in Japan, TopQ NOG in Germany, which would be probably about 80% of the German market. We work with Genes Diffusion in France, and also Ciavet, an AI company in Argentina, which it's maybe not on a regular basis, but we actually have a small shipping going there here pretty soon. And then a little bit of work with K&L in Holland. They're not an AI company, but they're a marketing organization in the Netherlands that resells some embryos and also put some embryos in for trying to make some bolts for AI over there. As far as how we work with our clients, our clients make the decisions on what they contract, and several of you here would have been on an inspection trip that we've had from once, twice, or very often. They select the animals that they would like to consider for contracting with our assistance as far as providing information, etc., any knowledge that we might have of cow families, pedigrees, farms, willingness to sell embryos, that kind of thing. And then we actually bring them to farms. Most of our clients, with the exception of the Argentina group, will travel in the U.S. once, most of them actually twice a year. And then they take a look at the animal, the information, the cow family, and determine which animals that they would like to pursue for contracts. And we've been doing that for a long time. Obviously, how we determine which animals, or how they determine which animals are of interest has changed a lot, and we'll probably get into that a little bit later with a few other questions. But anyway, our focus really is working with AI companies and almost exclusively in foreign countries to help them with their programs.
Thank you, Steve. It's now my pleasure to introduce Hendrik, who serves as project coordinator for Holstein Plaza. Launched in 2011, Holstein Plaza facilitates embryo and heifer sales between domestic and international customers, focusing on both high-end genomic individuals and those animals with high type and solid cow families. At the moment, sales are roughly 50-50 ratio between those two groups. Hendrik works on a 4-person US-based team that builds marketing opportunities for its membership, who are largely farmer breeders. With a strong international sales background and a wealth of knowledge from working with his family's AI breeding service company, Hendrik brings a unique international perspective to our panel. Hailing from Friesland in the Netherlands, Hendrik holds a master's degree in management, economics, and consumer studies. He has held internships in the United States, Germany, and Indonesia. At Holstein Plaza, Hendrik's main focus is online embryo auctions, the 24/7 web shop, online heifer sales, Hotspots magazine, and the Bull program. I also know that Hendrik lives currently with the Van Dykes, and just to make him at home, I have 2 empty pots of coffee. They're not full. He's upset that they're empty, but usually by this time of the day, he'll have drank both of those. So we wanted to make him at home here. Hendrik, your opening question. Holstein Plaza runs in a slightly different business model. Discuss that mixed model that features online embryo and heifer auctions blended with private orders.
Thank you, Corey, and thank you for the introduction. I guess you talked to Bonnie about the empty coffee pots. Well, thanks for the introduction. Yes, I started at Holstein Plaza in June last year, and Holstein Plaza runs a slightly different model than my neighbor. We work with our members. Breeders can sign up for our website, and we work with their donors. We host embryo auctions every 2 weeks, and next to that we have heifer sales every 4 times a year, every quarter, and we have an online web shop that's online 24/7 for embryo purchases. We work basically with breeders all over the world, clients all over the world, and the market varies quite a bit. This year our domestic market is really strong because most of the US breeders had quite a good year last year. And the dollar is at the moment is a little bit on the strong side, so that hurts a little bit the exports. So our domestic market compared to other years is this year quite strong. But we also had other years like last year when the dollar was quite weak, which is kind of in favor of the exports. So that's a little bit what we do. We strictly, for our auction, work with our members. Members can sign up. There's a fee for that, and it depends upon the level of donors they want to have online, either 5, 10, or 15 donors. And we post news items for them on the website. We create a personal website for them. So basically we're your marketing assistant when it comes to marketing your embryos and genetics.
Hendrik, you can start with the first question for both of you. Talk a little bit more about your customer base, and specifically how that customer base in terms of buyers has evolved over time.
Well, it's a moving market. The market is always moving. It depends on how the economical situation is in a certain country, whether people are buying or not. I mean, if Australia has a drought for a couple of years, they're probably not buying a lot of embryos because they need their money elsewhere. So it's always a moving market, what I just already said. Currently the domestic market is quite strong because the US breeders had quite a kind of good year last year. I think at the moment it's about 60-70% of our sales is domestically, while in 2011 I think 80% of our sales was internationally. Over the years we exported to 26 countries. We sold embryos to 26 different countries. For our embryos export we work strictly through AMS Genetics, who has a lot of experience in the export business. So I hope that answers the question.
I mentioned a little bit about our buyers or our clients. Really haven't changed very much over the years. Genuleaf's been in existence now for about 15 years, and right from the start we had Genetics Hokkaido and Takyu were clients of ours, and we continue to have those clients. There's some changes in Germany to where mergers with the AI companies, and we added the NOG group just kind of last year. And then Genes Diffusion was a company that we just started working with a couple of years ago in France. Diamond Genetics, who's kind of maybe the parent company in a sense of Yeah, our sister company of AMS, we worked with Diamond Genetics and Jan de Vries for a couple of years when they first kind of started getting into the market here, and then they subsequently bought AMS and went on their own. But yeah, we've been fortunate. We've been blessed to have very good clients on the buyer's end, and they've stuck with us. Now, of course, on the other end, we're brokers, and we also consider breeders as our customers as well, and that constantly evolves. That's always that can be different from year to year to year to year, and now there's a few that, interestingly enough, I mean, man, I've been going to their farms for 30 years. You know, it makes me feel a little bit old, but seriously, I've been stopping at their farms for 30 years and really been able to develop some really good relationships and friendships with some of the most wonderful people in the world that way. So we're blessed.
Steve, why don't you start the next question? So let's talk about the word elite. What does the word elite genetics mean to your international customers this day? In short, what attributes do customers look at when making a purchase?
Okay, no, that's a good question. I get that question a lot, quite honestly. And I guess I would term, we don't define the word elite. It's really our buyers that define the word elite to us. It's our job to help them source the genetics that they feel is elite. And you ask a breeder out here, what's an elite genetics, you get a lot of different questions, or a lot of different answers, and none of those answers are right or wrong. It just, everybody's situation's a little bit different. So, our clients, are going to be looking for genetics that they feel their mass market is looking for in their particular country. It's all about, they're in the business to market semen and supply the demand that they have. Now, what does that mean more specifically here? They're looking for their particular balance of production type and health traits, and there are similarities certainly between how we look at that in general in the U.S. and the AI market, but each country is a little bit different. One common thread is high protein. That is absolutely, we just can't market really anything unless they're high protein. It kind of starts with that. Germans really emphasize feet and legs, and now milking speed and teat length are a couple of traits that are really important to them. The Japanese would be a little less, put a little less emphasis, for instance, on daughter fertility or DPR. A little bit more emphasis maybe on udder composite and type, but really a lot of emphasis on protein. But that's really what, like I said, we don't define elite, our customers do, and that it does, it changes and evolves over time.
Well, I have not a lot to add to that. I just want to say, like every breeder, every customer is also unique, and what Steve already explained, they have specific demands. So I don't think we can define the word elite in one sentence or two. So yeah, it's based on the customer.
Proof that it's a small world. Hendrik grew up about 20 miles from where Hank Van Dyke was born. And also, if I have my information right, Dan Knassen's grandfather was born on your farm.
Oh, the same city.
Same city,
Yeah.
excuse me, same city. So we are truly in the dairy industry a small world. Hendrik, why don't we go with this next question? We know that this is a constantly moving barometer, but what does it take to be considered a high-end genomic female? And what's the time frame before a marketing opportunity sunsets on an individual in this high-end stratosphere?
Well, that's a difficult question to answer. I think a lot depends on, to be considered a high-end genomic female, I think it depends on a lot of different factors. I mean, what's the pedigree? What bloodlines are in there? How old is the animal? I mean, some of the calves are really young. But you need to compare, of course, animals in the same age range. I think that's only fair to do. And of course, also the cow family matters. We have a lot of buyers that are still interested in buying embryos out of certain cow families, strong cow families that have developed over years and have proven themselves. So yeah, I think it's a difficult question to answer again. There's not a clear-cut answer to this kind of question. Because it depends on a lot of different factors. And of course there's different systems, like Steve already explained, he works with a lot of RZG, and a high animal on TPI does not always mean that they're going to be high on RZG or the other way around. So there's a lot of different factors influencing it.
Yeah, just quickly, I probably mentioned a little bit in the last response, but if you're trying to get down to specific numbers, and it's always hard to do that because there's all those exceptions and everything else. So I mean, it's just kind of general rules. You know, right now I'm putting together a tour for a Japanese, and 45 pounds of protein is pretty much the minimum on them, and for them, and they look at the U.S. information only. Being positive on DPR or fertility index is important. You know, having feet and legs and udder composite, at this point probably we're looking more at about 1.5 on those numbers. Look a little bit less at type, more at just udders and feet and legs right now. But again, it starts getting into the other things about the pedigree too. Is the dam classified? Is there higher reliability bulls in the pedigree? So it's more than just the numbers. It really is. There's other things that are involved. Our clients are always looking for something different. You know, that was talked about a little bit yesterday, and man, it is darn hard to find something that's really, really different. But if you can, they'll sacrifice on whether it's TPI or whatever to try to come up with something a little bit different. Now that probably means using a little bit of a different mating sire too, and that can sometimes get to be a little bit of a tricky thing as far as getting the breeder to use that different mating sire, because everybody wants to chase, you know, the highest numbers. They're more apt to do that. So.
Talk about, and we've alluded, both of you have alluded to this, the different genetic systems around the world, the Germans and Holland and Dutch, and that. So we're not only testing them on the U.S. base for TPI, but there's an evolution that customers want to see how they rate on their system. Talk about that evolution.
Yeah, I think that's just another thing that's really changed over time. You know, genomics came along. To start with, while we were kind of toying with that, and you know, a few of the donors that our clients contracted were genomic tested. A lot of them weren't, and got to the point, didn't take very long, and it was just pretty much required that all of the donors that we work with are genomic tested, and that's the way it is right now in the U.S. And then the other countries followed along with getting genomic information, and got to be some experience with our German clients where bulls have been AI bulls, potential mating sires that were tested in both the U.S. and Germany, and they found out that there can be differences. And it stands to reason that there are differences. I think that's kind of the background on that. You know, the feed that they feed in Germany or other countries isn't the same as we feed here. The climate's not the same. The barns aren't the same. It stands to reason that different genes are going to respond a little bit different in different countries and different populations. It's just the way it is. And you have to remember, they're buying for their market. So they saw that there were differences. Not all the bulls that were the highest here were the highest there, and there were some bulls that were not as high, you know, here that were mating sires over there. So the next thing it evolved into, well, if we want to do this the best we can, we really need to know what the females are as well. So again, it started where we did a few females on the German system, and now it's evolved into our German clients won't buy anything unless the animal has been tested on the German system, RZG. Now that's starting to move over to France a little bit too. We're going to be doing a little bit more genomic testing on the French bases as well. Now the one thing about the German system, the reason you hear a lot about RZG is that is the most transparent system in Europe. You know, there's a Scandinavian system, there's a Dutch system, there's a French system, but the most transparent system is the German system, and it's really kind of become the de facto European index. So you know, and that stuff is going to continue to evolve. But I'm working on probably get results on 450 heifers here in April. I mean, you heard a bunch of them getting tested from the sale last night, and other people have gotten emails from me in the last couple of days. So it's getting to be, you know, pretty involved.
Well, I don't have a lot to add to that. I think Steve explained it quite clearly. But there's more market opportunities out there than just the domestic market. Every country has a different system. The Italians, for example, they like big production, high tide. The Dutch are more comparable to the Germans. So if you have an animal that you feel might rank well, and if there's a sire lineup or a sire stack in there that does well in different countries, it doesn't hurt to test them there. We, with Holstein Plaza, we offer testing in Germany, but we also work with other clients, so we can get your animals tested. And if they come up back high, you could probably get a nice embryo contract on them, and there's another market opportunity.
I'm going to have another question here, and after that one, I'll open it up to the audience. We're about the halfway mark. Following up on just kind of the physical process of DNA testing in other countries, how do you assist your customers in getting those samples to where they need to go? Just that physical process.
Well, we try to assist them in coordinating it, so it's either by sending the hairs or the SMPs. So we coordinate the request of the release of the SNPs to the lab there, and we're in touch with the lab here in the US and the lab in, for example, Germany, and we try to speed it up as much as possible. And then as soon as we get the results, we send them to the farmers. And with the hair samples, we try to collect the hair samples, send them in with a pedigree so they can register everything. And as soon as we hear back from them, then we'll send the breeder their information.
In our system, we just basically react to our clients' desires as far as which animals that they want to genomic test over here, and they pay for it. Excuse me. So, for example, right now I got a list of like over 500 animals from Germany that they would like to have genomic tested in the German system, and so we contact the breeders, get permission to do it. Then we have to know where the animal was, who originally submitted the sample, the AI company, Holstein Association, Zoetis. And then we contact them with a list of animals that we are asking them to contact the lab, at this point either GeneSeek or Zoetis for the most part, to transfer the SNP information to the lab in Germany, and then we get the results and we send the results back. So it's a kind of it's a pretty tedious, involved process. It's really easy for the breeder, and we're trying to make it that way. You don't have to pull hair, you don't have to be sending stuff around, you don't have to pay anything. You just say yes, and you're gonna, unless there's a problem with the SNPs or an ID thing or whatever, you're gonna get the results back. There are days when I feel like the U.S. branch of the German Holstein Association, because that's about all I'm doing is processing information. The unfortunate thing really is that there's no database where you can actually go onto and get all those results. So I have a lot of stuff in my computer, and it's getting bigger and bigger all the time, and it's going to continue to be. So hopefully down the road someplace there's going to be some coordination where there's actually a database where people can access that information.
And part of that issue, and correct me, Steve and Hendrik, if I'm wrong here, but my interpretation, so we had a system at one point where Interbowl took all the genetic evaluations in the world, harmonized them, put them back out so that everything was ranked on your country's system. In this genomic era, there's different groups that are being a little closer to the vest with that data, so this is what develops to get information flow between countries.
Right. Now there's a lot of individual countries that have information, and like I said, a lot of them are very, very closed with the information. You really can't get it. The German system is more transparent, but yet they're still different than the U.S. They're not as transparent as the U.S. as far as being able to go someplace and access the information. To access the information, you basically have to be a submitter. You have to be an AI company to get the information from VIT, which is the lab in Germany. There is, and it's more evident in Europe, there is work on interval genomics. You don't hear much about it here, but that is something that is getting to be a little bit more popular in Europe, where they actually have interval genomics.
Questions?
Oh, no.
Questions from the audience? Don't be bashful. Willis.
So how far away are we from that, and why aren't we there? If evaluating DNA and SNPs should be science, why don't you know, why isn't there the climate of pursuing an equal evaluation system where all animals can be compared on the same system? What's holding it up?
Well, I mean, I think that's a good question. I mean, there's probably a couple of different schools of thought there. That you know, having one system. I mean, if we had an interval system, for instance, where we're comparing animals from country to country in the U.S., I don't know that it would help us out necessarily a lot. A lot of European animals are tested on the U.S. system. I mean, I think the best information we have is actually genomic testing the animals in each different country, because it's going to be more relevant, more accurate information for that country than to do conversions. I think one of the reasons, you know, Europe's a different animal really than the U.S. because you have a lot of different countries and they're doing international marketing and that kind of thing. You know, the TPI and now RZG's moving that way too are really important numbers as far as international marketing is concerned. So having some of those genomic conversions is probably useful to clients in South America and places like that where they don't have their own system. But no question in my mind, the most accurate information any country is going to have is going to be the actual genomic testing of those animals in their countries. There's differences. There's differences. Because again, the big thing is you can't expect the same genetics to perform the same in every different country because of differences in environment, feed, everything else. Just because a bull is seen to be a wonderful bull here, that doesn't mean he's a wonderful bull in another country just because of the environments that those animals are going to be in.
Well, to elaborate a little bit more on Steve, you know, I think what Steve is saying is right. I think some bulls do much better work here in the US, herds, because you have a different setting here than in Europe. Well, in Europe, you know, they have protein is really important. They have a quota system, so the whole setting there is quite a bit different than here from the US. Well, the quota will be gone soon, so maybe we'll move a little bit more to the same direction, but I think, and what Steve also said, you need the actual genomics, because when you do the GMAs, the reliability factor goes down quite a bit. And we all remember, I think, those bulls, you know, that came down with the first proof here in the US, European bulls that were top of the notch, and, you know, a couple proofs later, they were down quite a bit. So I think what Steve also says, you know, we need the real genomics, the actual genomics.
Other questions? Well,
in the last few years, we've seen an explosion of the demand for poll genetics. Do you feel that there's another trait out there right now that's beginning to have a groundswell of demand in another country or anywhere in this country? Another trait such as polled or red or some of these unique traits that we have begun to market as like one?
Well, I think the thing is with a trait like polled, you know, in Europe the animal liberation parties have quite a lot of power, and you know, you can't really underestimate that. So you know, they think dehorning calves is sad and silly, and so that's why polled took really off in Europe and still is really popular. I think in Germany last year over 100,000 first services to cows were done to polled bulls. I don't think necessarily there's going to be a trait like polled. Well, red is quite popular in Europe. But the Europeans, they like complete indexes also on the bull side. So good for milking speed, good teeth length. You know, they don't like mistakes in the bulls. They like the all-round, very complete profile bulls.
Yeah, the poll thing for sure is driven kind of by more of the animal rights movement in Europe. So yeah, we market quite a bit of polled and quite a bit of red too. Now, as far as you know, your real question is what going forward, what might there be? I think you really try to look at that globally, and you look at it's going to be economic traits. It's going to be driven by economics, whatever is really strong economically. I think the emotion and all that kind of stuff, just as you know, the population gets bigger and you know, trying to make as much food out of as small farm acres as as we can, those things will be driven by economics. And I mean, I think trying to be on the leading edge as far as anything in the way of feed efficiency and having really good information on that, I think once there gets to be really good information on that, that's going to be valuable anywhere. You know, we're kind of in the infancy of that right now. So I mean, I think long term that could be big if you have really good information on that. You know, trying to produce the most amount of food with the least amount of consumption on the animal that's producing it is that's kind of what animal agriculture is really about. Now, teat length and milking speed are two things that are really big in Germany right now. We don't have very good information on milking speed. We've got to do better on that. We really do. I think that's a trait that we're behind on. And for those of you who have a little bit of an influence on that, I think, and it's not hard data to get. You can get a lot of very accurate data on that and incorporate it into genomics. But I think that's something in the U.S. we really have to do. I mean, we're fine on teat length. We have the information on that, but we just don't have it on milking speed.
Other questions from the audience?
What's the range and price of the embryos that you market, from the high end to the low end, and what would you perceive the medium to be?
Well, it's not a really difficult question, of course. I mean, I think that the embryos we market in our auctions, I think the lowest one start at $300 and up to several thousands of dollars, all depending on what the pedigree is, the cow family, the genomes or the type. And ultimately, you know, in our auctions, it's the breeder that sets the reserve. So it's in the end, it's the responsibility of the breeder himself, what they want for their embryo, or what they, and that's why we put it for in the auction. But there's a wide price range when it comes to that.
Yeah, we probably have a little bit less of a price range, and you know, what we're trying to do is work with the buyer and the seller and come up with prices that can be supported on both ends. So I would say our range for the most part, and there are exceptions, but our range for the most part, Bonnie, would be $1,500 to $2,500. The average would be a little bit less than $2,000. So we deal with a pretty high price embryos, but it's a very specific market. Our clients have, you know, they're very fussy to get what, you know, precisely that they want. So that help?
Just to elaborate a little bit on that, see, where Steve works mostly with contracts, we work with embryos that already have been made. So that's also, you know, a little different field we're playing in.
And Hendrik, let's follow up on that. So you're working not with contracts, but more of a finished product, frozen embryos and heifers, or living heifers. Talk about how you ensure product quality and that things are ready for sale and that they would meet customer expectations, the buyer.
Well, what's important is that we always have a variety in our embryos, a variety in donors, where the embryos are from. Either, you know, high genomics, high types of show cows, embryos out of show cows, deep pedigrees, to have a wide variety and also in prices, to make sure that, you know, there's something for every buyer in the world that wants to buy an embryo.
What about the physical quality? Like, the embryos are good, but, you know,
Yeah.
the
Well,
physical specifications.
Well, it always comes with the paperwork that guarantees the quality, and if there's an issue, we'll make sure that we'll resolve it with, you know, the buyer or the seller. You have a question?
I was just wondering about sex embryos. Is that still a limiting factor? Are we able to sell sex embryos?
We've been selling more and more sexed embryos. You know, of course, now with the new sexed ultra technique of sexing technologies, the results with flushes seem to be better. We heard I guess with the first series of sexed embryos, there's some breeds with bad experiences, you know, with flushes that bombed because the quality wasn't good enough. But also on the type side, I think we move a lot of sexed embryos. Gives also, you know, the buyer certainty with generous coming. So yes, sexed embryos for sure are getting more and more popular.
Some countries won't accept sex embryos at this point, though, right? Or is that wrong?
Depends on the bulls. You know, some bulls, for like Japan, the bulls need to be tested on specific things, and you also have it with other countries. There's some specific blood work, or the age of the bull needs needs to be right. So there's some specific demands for sometimes when it comes to the bulls, and some bulls will not be accepted in certain countries.
Other questions?
Mr. Hendrik, on your auction site, obviously your high GTBI embryos are kind of be a hot item, I imagine. What else draws a lot of interest, maybe not outside of the show market? What other embryos draw a lot of interest that are most popular on your website, that are going to sell?
Well, that's the thing I learned when working with Holstein Plaza. We can never predict what's going to sell. Sometimes you think, you know, we have a lot and this must sell, this has to sell, this, I think the price is right, the genomics are right, for example, and a lot doesn't sell, and when you rerun it in an auction later, people are fighting over it. So there's no, I guess there's no clear-cut answer to that. The market is always moving, and depending on, you know, in which country the economics are right, the regulations are right, which countries are buying, which embryos are moving.
Brian?
Are the IVF embryos accepted everywhere now, or is there just certain countries that take them?
No, IVF embryos, well, they can now go to Canada, the EU, China, and I don't think in 2 other countries at the moment.
Kevin?
Hendrik, you mentioned the quota. Do either of you see, I'd like perspective on both, like from the AI companies in Germany, are they selecting for different things now that there is not going to be a quota in Europe? Do you see a change in philosophy?
As far as what I know, as you know, what I see in the Netherlands, where I'm from, yes, we do see a difference. You know, basically what we had was a fat quota, so people were pursuing protein, trying to limit fat, so they can, you know, sell as much kilograms as they could. And we now see that the focus is more from a percentage-wise going to a pounds, you know, focus on pounds of protein instead of the percentage of protein or the percentage of fat. That's what we see the difference. People want as much milk per cow placed in their barn, or as much kilograms of fat and protein, because that's what they get paid for.
Yeah, Kevin, I'd say our clients probably haven't really noticed too much of a difference. I'd say they've been trying to throw ahead of the ball a little bit on that for the last few years, really. But what Hendrik says is absolutely right as far as the fat quota. Same thing in Germany; they had a fat quota. So it was kind of funny. They're kind of, the economics would suggest that don't pay any attention to fat. You're trying to get as much protein sold as you possibly could, but yet there's the traditional element that breeders in Germany had always liked high percent fat too. It didn't make any sense economically, but yet they'd still have a little bit of difficulty selling a bull that was really low for fat. But they've been anticipating the end of the quota really for a while, and so I really haven't seen any big changes.
Steve, why don't you keep the mic on? And you both have different models, but if a breeder thinks that he or she has cattle or embryos that could be marketed by one of your organizations and haven't worked with you yet, what would you suggest they do?
Well, you know, for us, we'll find you. There's lots of lists and all. I mean, and there's so many lists and everything else. One thing, to be honest with you, I kind of miss. I mean, hey, genomics is great science. It's not perfect, but it's very, very good science. I mean, you have to look at it as progress like anything else is. But you know, the one thing we always used to pride ourselves on is having a network established where we could find good young cows before anybody else did. You know, or good young cows defined by our buyers, what they were looking for. Well, now everybody's got the same lists. They're going all over the place. So we'll find you if we have something that our clients are looking for. We'll find you. Now, on the other hand, once we do find you, as far as keeping a good relationship with our clients. Just being good to work with. I mean, I can tell you there's places that if they have a borderline animal, they get a contract. Some other places, maybe they don't. I mean, it's just a matter of, you know, if you get a contract, doing the very best you can to get that contract filled, making sure that all the little, you know, T's and I's, T's are crossed, I's are dotted, all that kind of stuff. And like I said, then if you have something that's a little bit borderline, why, you know, people, they'll keep wanting to come back. But it's no problem finding us. But on the other hand, if you have questions or you have something you know, specific that you have, that, you know, the best thing is to, email, text, give me a call, and we can talk about it.
Well, when it comes to Holstein Plaza, I would say, send us an email, give us a call, and we would love to sit down with you and talk about what we think works for you marketing-wise and how we can get you set up with Holstein Plaza and hopefully sell your embryos or sell your heifers or promote your genetics.
Questions from the audience?
I'm interested as far as your opinion on the developing industry in China. And I went to a meeting about the growth there and the amount of cows they've imported, their heifers have been imported. Is there also embryo market in China? And are you seeing growth in that, or?
Well, we don't do too much with China yet, but there is a big embryo market in China. But one of the limiting factors is that your vet needs to be certified to send the embryos there. So they need to. There's a Chinese group that needs to visit them and basically score the facilities there before you can actually market there.
Yeah, we haven't worked in China either. I mean, there's people here that have sold a lot of embryos in China, but they tend to, because of the complexity of the requirements to get embryos into China, they tend to work with a smaller number of people and sell quite a few embryos. But there's a lot of embryos that have gone over there. Again, if we had an AI company over there that really wanted to work with us, I guess we'd consider it, but probably wouldn't work real well because getting embryos from a lot of different individual farms isn't very, it just isn't practical at this point, given the restrictions and the requirements that they have.
And Steve and Hendrik can comment on this, but I think the evolution of China's dairy industry, in a nutshell, is still kind of like the Wild West of the U.S. 100 and some years ago. You have a lot of the dairy consumption along the coast and the modernization happening there in that east coast, and you get about 50 miles inland and you're in a different world. And the other thing is you have a central government planning system yet. So New Zealand's exporting half of their dairy products, the world's largest dairy exporter, to China. And right now those products are cheaper than what the domestic producers can do. And there's numerous reports out there. You're trying to get this domestic dairy industry going in China, and they're dumping the milk because the processors won't take it because they can get it cheaper from New Zealand. So you got this real big yo-yo and teeter-totter going right now. Other questions? So with social media and electronic communications, it's really kind of changed how we talk to each other and marketing embryos and cattle. Talk about the human element. Why do relationships still matter in doing these business transactions?
I probably alluded to that a little bit as far as our, we're still pretty hands-on, old-fashioned when it comes to, we make the inspection trips, we look at most of the animals, or our clients look at most of the animals that they contract, they look at the dams and everything else, so they get on to a lot of farms in a year, and it's like anything else. There's the relationships do make a difference, and well, I guess I like that, but being and just about everybody is. Farmers are great, as far as making a good experience for our clients. I think most of you who've had our clients at farms know that they're friendly and they like to converse and try to spend a little bit of time if you have questions talking about them and all that kind of stuff. But there's no question, that the human relation part of it does make a difference in our business.
Well, so it does for us. Well, I know our business is mostly online. We do with our auctions, and we work a lot on Facebook and our website. But in the end, it's the personal relationships and the relationships you build up during the years with your clients. It's going to make a difference. From our members' perspective, if we a good relationship with our members also guarantees us of a nice product in our auctions, and the other way around too. People that are satisfied with us come back to us, buy again. And those relationships are by far the most profitable.
We have time for one more audience question here before the state annual meeting starts. Does anybody else have a question? If not, we'll wrap up with one basic question. How has genomics changed your business?
Quite a bit. No, I think after Genomic started, that's one of the reasons why we now do 2 auctions a month instead of 1. Because, you know, with the new mating sites coming out, there's a big demand for those early embryos. That's one of the reasons why we now do 2 auctions a month. That's why we set up the web shop, just to make sure that, you know, people that are looking for those early embryos, they can buy them. So that's one of the things. We set up hotspots to inform people also about the changes in genomics, to update them about member news. So yeah, genomics actually changed our business quite a bit.
Yeah, it's changed it a lot. I mean, I've been through a few changes over the years, but you know, we went from contracting quite a few heifers, you know, many years ago, to finding maybe that doesn't, maybe the results aren't the greatest, to pretty much contracting all young cows, and you know, going out and trying to find them, like I explained before, to fewer cows, to mostly heifers, to just about all heifers at this point. So the average age of the animals that we contract are certainly younger, and from a mating sire standpoint, a huge difference. We used to work with you know, kind of a handful of mating sires for, and now there's a bull, a new bull that comes out just about every day that I haven't heard of, that I have to look up. So it's changed it, you know, a ton, but it's one of those things that you either keep up or you get run over from behind. So I'm trying to survive a little bit longer, so we're trying to keep up. And I mean, it's interesting. I said it's great science. It's not perfect science. Nothing is, but you know, it'll continue. It'll continue to evolve too. It's not going to stay the same. You know, 5 years from now, we're going to have another conversation about this. It's going to be a lot different than it is today. I'm not sure what it's going to be, but it's not going to be the same as it is right now.
So I want to thank the Wisconsin Holstein Board of Directors. We've been doing these early bird sessions now for about 4 or 5 years, and I think we've had some awesome topics, and the attendance in the room states that as a fact. And in particular this morning, I would like to thank Steve and Hendrik for spending time with us. This was really great and interactive. Let's thank them.